Rain slicked the streets, the pub's neon sign casting a faint glow on the wet pavement. A good night for this, I thought with a flicker of doubt. Intuition can be a fickle friend. Reaching the pub a few minutes early, I scanned for a discreet corner. Parking the van out of sight, I secured it and checked for unwanted eyes. All clear. Inside, the near emptiness confirmed a typical midweek lull. Perfect. A nod to the barmaid yielded my usual drink and a quick exchange of pleasantries about the weather and the local football team's woes. "They're in the back," she said with a jerk of her head. Thanks, and a short walk later, I found my group for urban explorers, a mix of ages, all looking mismatched in their outdoor gear. This was it, the job. For figures occupied the back room, a mismatched group united by their outdoor gear. Despite their youth, 3 seemed barely 30. Their leader, a wiry older man, held court with a droning monologue. I stifled the urge to silence them. Establishing dominance could wait. Introductions were brief. I used a pseudonym, a necessary precaution in this murky business. They, however, revealed their real names, a condition of our arrangement. My research had paid off. Faces now had names. The young couple, Keith and Kim, were inseparable, their affection radiating like a beacon in the dim room, a stark contrast to the cynical shell I tried to maintain. Sure, I missed the warmth, the connection, the very things advertising thrives on. But there were other rewards for a seasoned guide like myself. The old man, Bruce, was a walking know-it-all, droning on about technical details with the confidence of an internet forum troll. He might be a pain, but at least his scrawny build wouldn't pose much physical threat. Josh, the youngest, stood out like a sore thumb in his black clothes and elaborate sleeve tattoo. Online, he was a conspiracy theorist, dabbling in everything from cryptozoology to UFO sightings. This line of work attracted all sorts. It wasn't exactly a package tour. With introductions over, I grabbed a stool. "All right, ground rules one last time," I announced. Josh scoffed while the lovebirds, Keith and Kim, giggled and playfully nudged each other. Bruce, however, gave me his full, hawk-eyed attention, barely blinking. "Number 1, I began. We stick together. No lone wolves, no dawdling. Break the rule and it's back the way we came." Understood. Bruce cleared his throat. Here we go, I thought. They have to wait for it to go viral before admitting it's fake, right? Josh scoffed. This video's been online for weeks, with almost 500,000 views. A short, desultory argument ensued before we finished our drinks. Time to head out. I led them to the van and distributed their gear, cheap cameras and hard hats with built-in lights. "Safety first," I quipped. "Although these won't ward off any subterranean horrors." Josh scowled but accepted his equipment. Phones went into the van and we were set. A short walk brought us to the old Civil Defense headquarters, a repurposed 1940s bunker from the Cold War, decommissioned years ago. It stood well back from the road, but I instructed them to wait before putting on their helmets. There was a hole in the fence I disguised with junk, easy enough to squeeze through. We then circled the building to a door secured with my own padlock. "Hard hats on," I instructed, "but hold off on the lights until we're inside." The old bunker was a labyrinth of concrete and steel chambers. Sparse relics of a bygone conflict, tattered maps, empty filing cabinets, and dusty cans of food lined the walls. We moved quickly, descending the stairs to the basement and then the sub-basement. Bruce, trailing close behind me, launched into an impromptu lecture on NATO nuclear warheads and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Keith and Kim, with their playful nudges, managed to subtly irritate him. Meanwhile, Josh remained silent at the back, likely still fixated on the video. We reached a dead end where the sub-basement wall had crumbled. "Subsidence from old mine workings," I explained. "Going through is risky, but I wanted to warn you beforehand. No accusations later, should things go south." Keith, ever the joker, declared, "Abandon all hope. ye who enter here. For some, a light-hearted quip. Understood, I said, leading them into the damp darkness of the Victorian storm drains. Their initial awe was undeniable. Even Bruce, the self-proclaimed expert, grudgingly admitted, a great achievement of the Industrial Revolution. Keith and Kim, wide-eyed, filmed everything in sight, though their enthusiasm soon devolved into filming each other. Josh remained his usual surly self, but hey, he paid like anyone else. All right, I said, my voice echoing in the tunnel. We're heading downhill under the city. Stay close. If you twist an ankle, your light dies, anything shout. Don't stray, don't explore side passages. And for God's sake, keep up. We stick together. It's the only way out alive. Seems pretty safe, Kim chimed in, oblivious to the damp chill and oppressive darkness. There are rats, I countered, a sly smile playing on my lips. As expected, she scooted closer to Keith, effectively glued to his side for the rest of the trek. The next 10 minutes were a slog through rainwater that seeped relentlessly through cracks in the aging brickwork. A faint tremor vibrated through the tunnel, followed by a distant rumble. Right under the main coastal railway, I announced casually. Bruce shot me a skeptical look but, thankfully, remained silent. An unsettling warmth prickled our skin, a stark contrast to the damp chill that clung to the tunnels like a second skin. The rhythmic drip-drip of water echoed off the brick walls, the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Even the distant hum of the city seemed muted down here, a world away. Getting a bit warmer. How's that happen? Keith chimed in, oblivious to the growing unease settling in my gut. Deeper you get, the warmer it gets, Bruce droned on, launching into an unwanted mini-lecture. Basic geophysics, I think you'll find. That's when you go really deep, Keith scoffed. Like miles down, closer to the Earth's. Watch a callet? Magma? We're quite deep, I admitted, my voice echoing in the vast chamber. But there's also some carbon dioxide buildup down here. Heavier than air, tends to sink. Their chatter subsided, replaced by a tense silence. We finally reached the end of the main drain. A massive iron grill loomed before us, offering a glimpse of a churning river below, rushing through a colossal culvert towards the distant sea. Is that it? Josh asked, his voice laced with disbelief. The end of the line, I confirmed, a cold dread slithering down my spine. Maybe it was the unnatural stillness that hung in the air, broken only by the gurgling water, or the way the faint greenish glow seemed to emanate from the depths beyond the grate. Whatever it was, a primal fear gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Bruce scrambled back with surprising agility for his age, but it was a futile effort. A creature unlike anything I'd ever imagined materialized from the green haze, its movements a blur. In a heartbeat, it was upon him, a flurry of limbs and chilling shrieks. The metallic tang of blood filled the air as the creature vanished back through the shimmering portal, leaving behind only a crumpled husk. Panic surged through the group. Kim screamed, a horrific sound cut short as another creature materialized behind her. Keith lunged for her, his face contorted in a mix of terror and desperate protectiveness. But it was too late. The creature snatched her away with inhuman speed. Josh, the ever-skeptical one, finally understood the truth behind the video. He bolted towards me, his eyes wide with terror. But another creature, faster than the others, intercepted him mid-stride. The sickening sound of tearing flesh filled the air as they dragged him back to the portal, his screams echoing in the damp tunnel. The entire ordeal lasted less than 3 minutes. When the silence returned, it was broken only by the dripping water and the ragged gasps of my own breath. The creatures had vanished, leaving behind a scene of unspeakable carnage. They had kept their end of the bargain for now. It was a deal I'd made years ago, back when the world was a different place. Back then, it felt like a necessary evil. Now, the weight of that decision pressed down on me like a physical thing. Who were these creatures? Where did they come from? What did they truly need? The answers remained elusive, shrouded in the same mystery as their origins. One thing was certain: they could return at any time. Until then, I had a job to do. I pulled out my phone and started filming the aftermath, my hands shaking as I captured the gruesome scene. The editing would be crucial. It needed to be believable enough to go viral, yet amateurish enough to seem like a hoax. The age of the internet had its advantages. Back in the day, luring people down here was a Herculean task. Now, with a carefully crafted video, I could ignite a frenzy from the comfort of my own home. A twisted smile played on my lips. The horrors of the unknown were always the most profitable. Excitement crackled around Devin like static electricity, barely contained by his trembling hands. He practically burst into the dining room, the package clutched tight to his chest. With a thud that echoed in the stillness, he slammed it onto the table. He lunged for the chandelier, flipping the switch and bathing the room in a harsh white light, a spotlight for his prize. His fingers fumbled with the rough twine binding the brown paper, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The cord snapped with a sharp report, slithering to the table like a discarded snake skin. He shoved the paper aside, revealing a sleek, silver box that seemed to hum with an unsettling energy. Each ragged breath rasped in his throat as he sank into a chair. With a deliberate slowness at odds with his racing pulse, he wedged his thumbnail between the box and the lid. The silence in the room was broken only by the soft hiss of the peeling tape as he meticulously severed the seal. Inside, nestled amongst white packing peanuts, lay a simple bill of sale and a single sheet of heavy parchment. Each corner was meticulously folded inward, as if guarding a secret, meeting in the center where a thick circle of dark green wax held them captive. A chillingly detailed scarab beetle was impressed into the seal, its gaze seeming to follow Devin's every move. A cold sweat prickled his skin as he gingerly broke the seal. He unfolded the paper with shaking hands, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. 5 lines of text stared back, each in a different language, a symphony of the unknown. The first resembled an elaborate series of pictures, Egyptian hieroglyphs no doubt. The second was a jumble of swirling lines, possibly Greek. The third held a rigid elegance, Latin for certain. The fourth flowed in graceful curves, adorned with dots and squiggles, Arabic most likely. And the fifth, blocky letters, some with little tails, Hebrew he presumed. Dread settled in his stomach as he realized none of it meant anything to him. He vaguely recalled the dealer's sly grin, and his words echoed in his mind. "There is a warning here, cannot be told." A shiver ran down his spine. What had he gotten himself into? "Yes," Devin rasped, his voice hoarse with barely contained desire. "Absolutely, I understand." The dealer's grin widened, an unsettling glint in his eyes, before he finally agreed to the sale. Devin barely registered the man's words, his mind already consumed by the wonders within the box. He set the cryptic message aside, a tremor running through his hands that he blamed on nervous anticipation. With reverence, he lifted the prize from its packaging. A dark wooden case, exquisitely crafted, housed a world unlike any he'd ever seen. Crystal clear museum glass offered a window into the meticulously crafted scene within. But the true masterpiece lay beyond the glass. A diorama, a frozen tableau of exquisite horror. 3 magnificent beetles, each a marvel in its own right, perched on intricately positioned branches. dried grass, meticulously glued to the base, completed the illusion of a forgotten forest floor. Yet, a disquieting tension hung in the air. Beneath the meticulously arranged branches, a hint of movement sent a shiver down Devon's spine. A spider, unlike any he'd ever encountered, lurked in the shadows. Its form, shrouded in darkness, was obscured by the meticulously placed branches, but its grotesquely long legs protruded, defying belief. 8 eyes, obsidian black and gleaming, seemed to pierce the glass, locking directly onto Devon's. Dark gray, almost black, the spider sprawled beneath the branches, its impossibly long legs jutting out at unnatural angles. 8 eyes, like chips of obsidian, gleamed an eerie emerald through the museum glass, catching the light and boring into Devon. A primal shiver snaked down his spine, a tremor that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. $300. The antique dealer in Milford had gouged him, but the memory of that predatory gleam in the spider's eyes overshadowed the financial sting. Devon had known, the moment his gaze fell upon the diorama, that he couldn't leave without it. A smile, strained at the edges, played on his lips as he sat mesmerized. Minutes bled into an eternity, the only sound his own ragged breaths. Finally, with a sigh that held more tension than contentment, he rose. The discarded packaging felt heavy in his arms, a physical manifestation of his impulsive decision. A half-hearted attempt at a Brahms whistle sputtered out as he reached for the recycling bin. The kettle's insistent whine jolted him back to reality. A notification flashed on his phone, his ex-wife's name a stark reminder of his mounting bills. The alimony payment, a nagging thorn in his side, felt heavier than ever. "Tomorrow," he muttered, the word a flimsy promise hanging in the air. He moved through the apartment on autopilot, the shadows cast by the drawn shades seeming to lengthen and twist. The maid's work, usually a source of satisfaction, barely registered. A disquiet, born from the watchful eyes in the diorama, now permeated everything. His collection, once a source of pride, felt different somehow, unsettling even. Had he unleashed something more than just a spider into his meticulously curated world? Other maids simply hadn't understood the delicate balance required. Janet, however, possessed a reverence for his collection that bordered on the uncanny. Perhaps that's why he tolerated her occasional oddities. With a final, lingering pat on the glistening carapace of a particularly rare beetle, Devon concluded his inspection. The kettle's shrill shriek shattered the silence, jolting him back to the mundane. A practiced efficiency guided his movements as he brewed his mint tea. The calming aroma filled the air, a stark contrast to the unsettling energy radiating from the diorama across the room. Delicate tendrils of steam danced above the mug, a fleeting beauty that mirrored the fleeting normalcy of his evening ritual. Yet, his gaze remained fixed on the display. He'd amassed an impressive collection over the years, each piece a testament to his unique taste. But this was different. The golden scarab, its sheen almost insolent in the lamplight, held a hypnotic allure. He understood with a chilling clarity the reverence the Egyptians bestowed upon these creatures. Its pose, perfectly balanced on a twisted branch, seemed almost purposeful. A morbid artistry, a testament to the taxidermist's skill, or something more. A prickle of unease crawled up Devon's spine. He couldn't imagine ever tiring of looking at it, but a new, unsettling question arose. Could he ever truly look away? A satisfied sigh escaped Devon's lips as he finished his tea. The warmth traveled down his throat, a fleeting comfort in the unsettling chill that seemed to emanate from the diorama. He rinsed his cup with robotic movements, his mind already consumed by his newest acquisition. He carried the display and the cryptic letter into his study, a sanctuary that now felt strangely oppressive. The gas flames in the fireplace hissed to life, casting flickering shadows across the room. Devin settled into his leather armchair, the worn leather cool and unyielding beneath him. The strange letter lay crumpled in his hand. A silent question hung in the air. Translate it or not? A glance at his laptop mocked him with the promise of answers. With a groan that echoed in the stillness, Devin rose and lumbered towards the computer. He typed the Latin sentence with trembling fingers, the translated words appearing on the screen like a malicious curse. Cursed and bound, the translation read, "Touch not the scarab, lest ye be touched. Life from your life, and evil awakened." A frown etched itself onto Devin's face. He reread the sentence, double-checking his typing. "No mistake." "Curious little warning," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The laptop screen seemed to glow with an unnatural light, repelling him. He slammed it shut and retreated back to the armchair, the letter clutched tightly in his hand. He tossed it onto the worn leather, a sudden urge warring with his lingering skepticism. A curse? It had to be nonsense, a ploy by some greedy antique dealer. Yet, the thought of the smooth, golden carapace beneath his fingertips sent a jolt of illicit pleasure through him. He licked his lips, a nervous habit, his gaze fixated on the diorama. The teasing scent, a whisper of something ancient and unknown, still lingered in the air. "Of course, I can touch it," he whispered, a manic edge creeping into his voice. "It's mine." His hand hovered over the display case, a battle raging within him. Desire warred with a flicker of fear, but the allure of the forbidden proved stronger. With trembling fingers, he lifted the lid, a wave of anticipation washing over him. Devin's eyelids fluttered, contemplating a celebratory brandy. But fatigue weighed heavy, and starting liquor before 6 meant no Sherlock on PBS tonight. A glance at the clock confirmed it, almost 6. A short nap, he decided, followed by a light dinner. Sherlock and Watson could wait, and the brandy would taste even better then. He settled back in his chair, unlacing his shoes and wiggling his toes into the plush carpet. A contented smile played on his lips as he thought about the new acquisition. The familiar symphony of nightly noises lulled him, the soft pops of the gas flames, the fridge's gentle hum, a car starting downstairs. Suddenly, a sharp crack shattered the lullaby. Devin jolted upright, the letter tumbling to the floor with a startled gasp. He rubbed his blurry eyes, taking in the room bathed only in firelight. The solitude of his study felt off. With a trembling hand, he reached for the floor lamp and flicked it on. The sudden brightness stung his eyes, and it took a moment to adjust. Everything was sharp now, and his gaze fell upon the source of the sound. The diorama. The front pane of glass lay shattered on the carpet, a jagged piece glinting accusingly under the lamplight. How? Confusion morphed into a cold dread as he picked up the fragment. It was inexplicably warm. A faint, sweet scent filled the air, unfamiliar yet strangely alluring. Panic flared in his chest. He looked at the diorama, his breath catching. Empty. The golden scarab, the centerpiece, was missing. Gone. He spun around, his eyes frantically searching the room, landing on the other displays. Birds, rodents, the black bear head. None stirred. How could the scarab have vanished? Ignoring the logical questions that hammered in his skull, he forced himself to breathe, his heart a frantic drum solo in his chest. Finding it was all that mattered. He knelt before the fireplace, examining the floor around the shattered glass. Logic dictated the scarab should be nearby, but logic had left the building the moment the glass inexplicably broke. After a tense search, a flicker of movement caught his eye. The scarab, clinging precariously to the underside of his chair, one leg twitching against the fabric. He inched forward, eyes glued to the escapee. He reached out, a cold sweat slicking his palms, and gently grasped the insect. Disgust coiled in his stomach as the thing scuttled across his hand, its legs unnervingly warm. An unspoken question formed on his lips. How dash? But it died before it could be spoken. A sharp prick at the back of his neck, a flash of pain, and his world spun. His limbs stiffened, a cold paralysis creeping through him. His thoughts swam, each one a struggle. He lay there, his vision blurred, but still focused on the scarab. It turned, its gaze seeming to meet his in an unsettling way. Then, from the corner of his eye, a movement. A dark blur, 8 impossibly long legs. It was the spider, but this wasn't the same lifeless creature from the diorama. This one moved with a horrifying purpose, carrying a large, pale egg sac. Through the haze clouding his mind, 2 chilling realizations dawned on Devon. First, the bite. It wasn't the lifeless spider. Second, this wasn't an it. It was a she. The scarab scurried down and joined the spider, depositing the egg sac at her feet. The 2 creatures stood side by side, an unspoken communication passing between them. Moments later, the other 2 beetles from the diorama emerged, taking positions near the egg sac. Together, the 3 beetles rolled it towards Devon. The spider, with a grotesque elegance unlike any ballerina, inched closer. A primal terror gripped him, a desperate urge to flee, but his body refused to obey. He was trapped, and whatever these creatures planned, he was at the center of it. Paralysis gripped Devon, his body a statue locked in a silent scream. The spider, a predator reborn, descended upon him with chilling grace. A single, impossibly long leg brushed his cheek, the sensation amplified by his heightened awareness. He couldn't flinch, couldn't even blink. The scrape of the leg sent shivers down his petrified form. The beetles, their once magnificent forms now grotesque parodies of life, continued their macabre task. The egg sac, an obscene pearl in their midst, rolled unnaturally towards him. The female spider, a weaver of nightmares, spun a web with horrifying efficiency. She anchored a strand beneath his chin, a puppeteer manipulating a lifeless marionette. Her movements, a blur of arachnid fury, became a silkscreen of terror across his face. A silent scream tore at his throat, a prisoner in his own body. He strained against the invisible bonds, the effort a futile dance with despair. Sticky silk, imbued with the strength of his own terror, sealed his eyelids shut. The world dissolved into darkness, punctuated only by the nightmarish symphony of clicks and skitters. The beetles, their forms magnified by the encroaching darkness, became monstrous harbingers of his doom. Their tiny legs, a collective tide of horror, scurried up his neck, their every touch a violation. They pushed the egg sac, a pulsating evil, towards its final destination. With a sickening precision, his jaw was pried open, the beetles shoving their unholy burden between his lips. A final act of monstrous intimacy. The spider, her movements a grotesque dance, spun a silken shroud over his lips, sealing his screams within. Devon lay there, a paralyzed husk, his gaze fixed on the letter, a cruel reminder of his folly. The strange symbols swam before his unseeing eyes, each a mocking echo of the knowledge he desperately craved. Against his numbed flesh, the egg sac pulsed with a life of its own. A horrifying question echoed in the desolate wasteland of his mind. When would they hatch? When would the true horror begin? The woman across from me, a vision in brunette with a welcoming smile, expertly shuffled the cards, her gaze holding mine captive. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, I managed to smile, the dim, cramped room doing little to hide my discomfort. I'd barely settled into my seat when I felt her attention lock onto me the moment I entered. "Mustafa," I offered, nodding at the other figures around the table. We were 5 in total, including the card-shuffling beauty. Glancing around, I searched for a familiar face, someone from past games, but none emerged except the man who'd invited me. Seated next to me, his smile, veiled by tinted glasses that hid his eyes, spoke volumes. "We were fresh meat, Mustafa," the woman repeated, her voice like honey. "Such a lovely name." "I'm Ria. The others will introduce themselves soon enough." A sheepish grin escaped me as I flicked a glance back at Tamer, bathed in brighter light on a nearby couch. He chatted with a group I presumed were the other players' companions. Double thumbs up and a wide smile later, my attention returned to the table. "Familiar with the rules, then?" Ria inquired. I met her gaze. "Kamara." It wasn't a stranger. Years ago, during a citywide blackout, my friendly doorman had introduced me to the game while stranded in the dimly lit lobby. 13 flights, a daunting climb. Cairo's power outages, a post-revolution norm, meant these electricity breaks were an unwelcome daily visitor. That night, after a marathon work session sprung on me by my manager, I'd considered staying put in my car. But the doorman's beckoning hand, a deck of cards extended, and the promise of a new game had lured me in. Card games were my weakness, a past campus gambling reprimand a testament to that. Ria's sly wink confirmed it. "Single queens are house rule," she announced. "Wouldn't have it any other way." I countered, the amusement in my voice drawing a sharp bark of laughter from glasses. Chimera felt like a familiar friend poker, but with a twist. Unlike the high-stakes games I bluffed my way through in high school, here, a single queen reigned supreme. It was a trump card, an instant win regardless of your opponent's hand. The game became a dance of veiled truths and calculated risks, a territory where I thrived. "Let the games begin." Ria purred, and time melted away. I became a hawk, dissecting every flicker of emotion on my opponent's faces. The early rounds saw 2 players fold with disgruntled huffs, retreating to the couches like wounded soldiers. Soon, only 3 of us remained. Glass's smile had vanished, replaced by a grimace. It was clear he was itching to see me falter. The thought of getting under his skin fueled my amusement. "Lucky, perhaps." He spat, his voice laced with frustration. Ria, however, hummed a different tune. Her gaze had been glued to me throughout the game, a predator assessing her prey. Every bluff, every bet, every fold, she devoured it all. I reveled in the challenge of keeping her guessing. Impatience crackled in the air. "Just deal the cards." Glasses spat, venom dripping from his words. Ria, unfazed, winked at me again. Her nimble fingers danced as she shuffled, then dealt the cards. A thrill shot through me as I saw the queen nestled among my hand. Maintaining a poker face, I met Ria's gaze. Her enigmatic smile sent shivers down my spine, especially since her cards remained frustratingly hidden. The game commenced with a hostile bet from Glasses. We both upped the ante, the tension thickening with each passing round. This charade dragged on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Glasses exploded, slamming his cards down and lurching towards Ria. "Cheating whore!" he roared, his face contorted in fury. 2 burly men materialized from the shadows, restraining him before he could reach her. Ria, unperturbed, continued shuffling, her gaze fixed on me. "That's hardly polite behavior for a guest," she said coolly. "Screw him," Glasses bellowed. "And you too, Ria." She turned to him, a mask of serenity settling on her face. It was a chilling display of control. "Are you forfeiting the game?" she inquired, her voice a silken threat. "You bet your ass I am," Glasses snarled, shrugging off the guards and scooping up his remaining chips. He tossed a handful at my pile with a sneer. "Enjoy your new plaything," he spat before storming out. My gaze followed him, then flicked to Tamer, the sole remaining observer. He shrugged helplessly, bewilderment etched on his face. As I turned back, Rhea winked again, the deck blurring in her nimble hands. "Still in the game, then?" she inquired, her tone flat. "Absolutely," I replied, trying to mask a flicker of unease. "Excellent," she cooed, a touch too sweetly. It'd be a shame to lose a promising player so soon. I watched, mesmerized, as she shuffled. Glass's accusations echoed in my mind, fueled by the way she kept her cards hidden. 5 cards materialized on the table, and Rhea leaned closer as I picked them up. "An enigma," she purred, her gaze lingering on my hand. A royal flush stared back, sending a jolt through me. "Just keeping you guessing," I countered, the unease morphing into suspicion. Why hadn't she touched her cards? Was Glasses onto something? "Discomforting you, am I?" she challenged, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Not at all," I lied through gritted teeth, a forced smile plastered on my face. "Just new to this whole intensity." Rhea's smile widened, the cards briefly flickering into view before disappearing again. An eyebrow arched as she pushed the opening bet forward. I met her challenge with a call, raising the stakes. "No swapping for me," I declared, confidence lacing my voice despite the churning unease in my gut. Rhea simply nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. With practiced ease, she discarded all 5 cards, her eyes flitting briefly towards the replacements dealt face down. Then, with a calculated push, she sent a hefty stack of chips towards the center of the table. "Let's raise the stakes, shall we?" she purred, her voice dripping with honeyed menace. My gaze flickered between the chips and my own meager pile. "I'll call and raise you all in," I bluffed, channeling the bravado I'd honed in countless card games. Rhea's smile widened, revealing a hint of something predatory beneath the veneer. "Oh, but this isn't about money, my dear Mustafa." Her voice dropped to a husky whisper, sending shivers down my spine. "This hand is for something far more valuable. Your name." Confusion clouded my features. My name. The very idea struck a discordant note. What use could she possibly have for something so simple? "Oh, it is, sweetheart," Rhea purred, her smile laced with a hint of something dangerous. "More valuable than you can imagine." Defeat gnawed at me, but I forced a smile. My royal flush lay face up on the table, trumped by the single queen mockingly staring back from Rhea's hand. With a sigh, I leaned back, the weight of the situation settling heavily on me. "Entertaining," Rhea remarked coolly as her guards swept away our chips with practiced efficiency. "You could have taken more money," I offered quietly, more bewildered by her strange request than upset by the loss. "Trust me," she replied, her eyes locking with mine. "I took far more than you realize." Her enigmatic smile sent a shiver down my spine, a premonition of something far more unsettling than a simple card game. The insistent pounding on my door shattered the remnants of sleep. Bleary-eyed, I fumbled for my phone, cursing under my breath at the ungodly hour. The hammering continued until I flung open the door, only to find Samir, my ever-present doorman, standing there. "What in the world?" I growled, barely containing the urge to snap at the man. "Apologies for the early wake-up call, Mr. Mustafa," he began. "But is Mr. Mustafa at home?" My scowl deepened, suspicion prickling at my skin. "I am Mustafa," I gritted out. "What's going on, Samir?" "Ah, no, I meant the other Mr. Mustafa," Samir replied, his tone unervingly calm. "Are you losing it?"
I snapped, frustration bubbling over.
Samir shook his head, his face hardening with sudden offense. "Absolutely not, sir," Would you please let Mr. Mustafa know his car is double parked, and the woman downstairs can't get out? I am Mustafa, damn it. I roared, my patience at an end. I'll be down there in a second. Slamming the door shut behind me, I stormed back to my room, the bizarre turn of events leaving a cold dread in its wake. What did Ria mean by her cryptic words? And who was this other Mr. Mustafa who suddenly seemed to exist? The day unraveled like a cheap sweater. I dodged Samir, my mind racing for an apology that wouldn't ignite a firestorm of questions. My errands became an obstacle course of hostility. The corner kiosk owner, usually a fountain of chatter, pretended not to recognize me, shoving my cigarettes across the counter without a glance. The bakery owner, the butcher at the market, all greeted me with the same icy indifference. Even Mrs. Patel, my ever-chatty neighbor, retreated into a stony silence during our elevator ride, forcing an agonizing ascent in air thick with unspoken judgment. The world, it seemed, had conspired against me. Calls to my parents went unanswered. My sister hung up the moment she heard my voice. Work emails bounced back, both professional and personal. Slamming my laptop shut in frustration, I dialed Tamer. Hello? His voice, thick with sleep, offered a lifeline in the sea of strangeness. The day continued its downward spiral. Envy gnawed at me as I envisioned Tamer, blissfully unconscious in dreamland. Reaching for my phone, I dialed his number, picturing a groggy response I could exploit for a good-natured morning jab. Hello? His voice, thick with sleep, offered a momentary comfort in the growing chaos. About time, sleepyhead. I chuckled.
Ma'am, I am Yalos.
Listen, I'm having trouble logging into my work email. Any idea what might be going on? Silence. A heavy, unsettling silence that stretched on for an eternity. Tamer, you still there? I prodded, a sliver of unease creeping into my voice. Who is this? The voice, devoid of recognition, sent a jolt through me. Check your caller ID, Tamer. It's Mustafa. I pressed, frustration lacing my tone. Look, I really need access to that email for work. Can you check your system or something? Another agonizing silence. Then, a chilling question. Mustafa who? My breath hitched. What do you mean, Mustafa who? The only friend you've ever had. The guy you're going to owe big time if you don't wake up and help a brother out. A beat of tense silence, then a harsh reply. Screw you, he spat, followed by the sickening click of a disconnected call. Dumbfounded, I stared at my phone, the image of Tamer's friendly face replaced by a sickening void. My finger hovered over the redial button, but doubt held me back. Surely this was some bizarre dream, a cruel trick of the sleep-deprived mind. Tamer would call back any minute, apologize profusely, and we'd laugh it off over coffee. Minutes bled into an eternity. Reason urged me to call again, logic screaming that something was terribly wrong. But a sliver of hope, as fragile as a spider's web, held me back. Tamer would wake up. He would realize his mistake. Just a little more time. Tossing the phone onto the couch, I started unpacking groceries, the mundane task offering a sliver of normalcy in the growing storm of confusion. The game with Ria, the strange encounters throughout the day, sleep hadn't erased the disquiet. It had merely buried it, a simmering pot threatening to boil over. Logic offered no answers, and my mind, a frantic hamster on a wheel, produced nothing but dead ends. There had to be someone who knew something, someone who could explain the tightening knot of dread in my stomach, the chilling premonition that things were about to get much worse. A glimmer of hope flickered in my mind. Glass's card. Maybe he knew something about Ria, about this whole bizarre situation. Abandoning the groceries, I lunged for the coffee table, yanking open my wallet. Frantically, I flipped through the worn leather, searching for the business card Tamer had procured. Then I saw it, or rather the absence of it. Where the card should have been, a gaping hole mocked me. Panic clawed at my throat. I dumped the entire contents of the wallet onto the table, the mundane plastic rectangles a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. Methodically, I laid out my credit cards, driver's license, and ID, a cold dread pooling in my gut. Each card was the same, a hollow shell. My name, once embossed in bold lettering, had vanished, replaced by a chilling emptiness. My breath hitched. My ID, a ghostly replica, stared back with the image of the Sphinx mocking my predicament. Even the colorful credit cards, once markers of my identity, were now nameless plastic. The truth slammed into me with the force of a speeding train. Ria hadn't taken money. She had taken something far more valuable. My identity, the very essence of who I was. The air grew thin, and a primal fear coiled in my stomach. I sank to the ground, the room tilting around me. Gasping for breath, I fought the rising tide of panic, the horrifying realization threatening to drown me whole. She had taken my name, and in doing so, stolen a part of me I wasn't sure I could get back. The harsh metallic clang of a closing gate echoed through the cluttered store. Ignoring the proclamation of "We're closed" scrawled across the filthy window, I pushed open the door, a faint jingle announcing my arrival. Dim light struggled to penetrate the chaos within, revealing a labyrinth of towering cardboard boxes. A gruff voice boomed from the depths of the store. "Didn't you see the sign? We're closed. I need your help," I called back, my voice echoing off the stacked boxes. A shuffling sound approached, followed by a figure emerging from the shadows. Glasses, his face obscured by mirrored sunglasses, squinted at me. Recognition flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by a sigh and a muttered, "What the hell are you doing here? So, you do remember me?" I pressed, a sliver of hope clinging to his words. He snorted, pushing his glasses further up his nose. "It's been, what, a day, kid? Of course I remember." His voice trailed off as he lowered his gaze, inspecting a nearby box. Then, his head snapped up, his voice dropping to a tense whisper. "You stupid, stupid boy." Ignoring the insult, I pleaded, "I need your help." Glass's posture shifted, a predatory gleam flickering in his eyes. "You sure do," he sneered. "Bet you lost something valuable, didn't you? Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into?" "No, I don't," I admitted, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "That's why I came here." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength, shoving me towards the door. "Leave, now. You can't be here. If she finds out you're talking to another no name." His voice trailed off, a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't decipher flashing across his face. "Another what?" I demanded, but Glasses slammed the door shut before I could get an answer, leaving me alone on the desolate street. My anger flared. I yanked my arm free, shoving him back with enough force to send him stumbling. Balling my fists, I met his gaze, voice laced with barely controlled fury. "Listen here, Glasses. You dragged me into this mess. Remember? You brought me to that cursed game. And I swear on everything, if you don't help me right now, I'll unleash every ounce of rage and confusion I've felt since this morning on you and this whole damn store." Glasses held my gaze for a long, tense moment. Then, with a sigh that spoke volumes, he reached up and began wiping his glasses on his dirty shirt. He examined the lenses in the dim light, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face before he finally pushed them back on. "I suppose it was only a matter of time," he muttered, his voice low and grim. Glasses led the way, his gaze fixed firmly on the ground. We'd caught the last train out, a desperate escape fueled by the bombshell revelations he dropped over 4 torturous hours of tea and hookah smoke. Information I'd craved, information I now wished I'd never learned. The complex of religions, usually teeming with guards, was eerily deserted. We slipped past them like phantoms, their obliviousness adding a layer of unreality to the situation. The hanging church, A place I'd visited countless times before, now loomed with a dark purpose. I remembered marveling at the ancient Roman fortress preserved beneath it, visible through glass floors. Never, in the throngs of tourists, had I considered what might lie even deeper. Glasses entered the church, the guard barely affording us a glance before looking away. A knowing look, or so I suspected. Appreciating the church's nocturnal beauty for a fleeting moment, I quickly refocused on the mission at hand. This wasn't a tourist visit. This was a descent into the unknown, a desperate gamble for a chance to reclaim my stolen identity. The church's cavernous nave swallowed us whole. We hurried past pews and pulpit, the rhythmic creak of floorboards the only sound in the oppressive silence. Glasses veered right, pushing open an unmarked door that led into a cramped, windowless room. More pews lined the space, their uniformity broken only by a solitary figure hunched over at the far end. He sat with his back to us, an unsettling stillness emanating from his form. Glasses stopped, a tense silence hanging heavy in the air. Finally, he cleared his throat. "We need to see her," he rasped, the words grating against the silence. A gruff voice, rough as sandpaper, echoed from the figure. "Not possible. Let her decide." Glasses countered, his voice tight with barely suppressed urgency. "Just announce us." The figure shifted, a slow, deliberate movement that sent shivers down my spine. The ensuing silence stretched on, more unnerving than any outburst. When the figure finally turned, his scarred face was etched with a mix of annoyance and something deeper, something I couldn't decipher. He rose stiffly and lumbered towards the wall, his hand settling on a seemingly unremarkable spot. The stones groaned in protest as they shifted, revealing a hidden staircase that plunged into darkness. "This is a transgression," the man grumbled as we stepped past him, the weight of his words heavy with unspoken threats. We descended into the inky abyss, the promise of answers hanging heavy in the stale air. "No worries, big guy," Glasses tossed over his shoulder, a hollow reassurance that echoed emptily in the vast space. I followed him down the damp, winding staircase, my clammy hands clinging to the rough stone walls. Each misstep earned a withering glare from Glasses, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. Despite the danger, a sliver of gratitude flickered within me. He was taking a colossal risk by bringing me here, and the grim set of his jaw betrayed his own fear. The stairs finally deposited us into a narrow corridor, which opened into a breathtaking chamber. The ancient gate passage stretched before us, illuminated only by slivers of light filtering down through the distant church floor. Awe momentarily banished my fear as I gazed upon the timeless space. Glasses nudged me back to reality. At the far end, bathed in an ethereal glow, sat Rhea. She was half hidden in the shadows, a figure of unsettling power hunched over a table eerily similar to the one from the night before. A twisted smile played on her lips, radiating a chilling welcome. The rhythmic snap of cards filled the silence as she shuffled the deck. "Philip," her voice echoed through the cavernous space. "This is an unexpected return. One would think you, of all people, would understand the consequences." Glasses, the braggart from before, was now a pale imitation. Sweat beaded on his forehead, betraying his anxiety. "The boy wants another chance," he stammered. "The boy has nothing to offer me," Rhea countered, her voice dripping with disdain. Unable to bear it any longer, I cut in. "I have my name," I blurted out, my voice echoing in the vast hall. "I want to play for it." Rhea leaned closer, the faint light revealing an unsettling glint in her eyes. "You misunderstand, Mustafa. Your name already belongs to me." "Then you don't have everything?" I pressed on, a desperate hope flickering within me. "My birth name,
Ibrahim.
that's what I offer. Think it might complete your collection." A slow, predatory smile spread across her face, sending shivers down my spine. "Indeed, Mustafa, You are even more intriguing than I first thought. The familiar weight of a royal flush settled in my hand, a bitter echo of the previous night. A cold dread coiled in my stomach. Was I falling into the same trap twice? Glass's warning about Ria's cheating echoed in my mind, but he'd also assured me this location was safe. Yet, her smile remained an unreadable mask, a facade I couldn't penetrate. Doubt gnawed at me. Had I made a terrible mistake venturing here? Luck, a fickle friend at best, had deserted me before. But hope, a fragile ember, flickered within. Taking a deep breath, I surrendered to the gamble, requesting 3 new cards. Ria dealt them with practiced swiftness, her lips curving into a cryptic smile. "Certain of your choice?" she purred, her voice laced with an unsettling undercurrent. Ignoring the question, I stared at the fresh cards, face down, a gamble on fate. Glasses, a reflection of my own turmoil, offered no solace with his sweat-drenched face. Steeling myself, I pushed the cards forward. "Show me your hand," I rasped. "Don't you wish to see yours first?" Ria countered, her voice a silken thread. "No matter," I gritted out. The stakes remained the same, a coin toss between triumph and oblivion. This time, however, the choice was mine. Victory or defeat hinged on the cards she held, and for the first time, a glimmer of control flickered in the oppressive darkness. Ria's smile widened into a gloating smirk as she revealed a full house, mocking my earlier fortune. Despair clawed at my throat, a sickening echo of the previous night. With a heavy heart, I reached for the new cards, each one a potential lifeline. As I turned them over, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Relief washed over me with the tide of a winning hand. I slammed the queen down, the trump card, and watched Ria's smile falter for the first time. "Looks like the boys got some luck after all," Glasses muttered, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Tension visibly loosened his shoulders, a glimmer of his bravado returning. "Indeed," Ria conceded, her voice laced with a hint of begrudging acceptance. "Your name will be returned." But the victory tasted hollow. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Ria's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, no?" she hissed, the facade of amusement crumbling. "I never said I wanted my name back." "Then what do you want?" A slow smile crept across my face. "Yours." Ria's smile reappeared, but it lacked its earlier warmth. "An exotic name," she purred, seemingly unfazed. "I understand the appeal." "I don't want Ria," I clarified, shaking my head. "I want your real name." The playful mask vanished entirely, replaced by a flicker of something akin to fear. Her gaze darted towards Glasses, a silent accusation flashing in her eyes. "So I hear you have an unofficial name yourself." I smirked, the knowledge a weapon in my hand. Ria's jaw clenched, her expression hardening into a snarl. "Tell me your name. Don't push your luck, boy," she hissed, a tremor in her voice betraying her earlier confidence. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Ignoring her threat, I met her gaze, my voice unwavering. "Tell me your name." A low rumble echoed from the depths of the chamber. The ground trembled slightly, a tremor growing stronger with each passing moment. "Change your request," Ria ordered, a flicker of desperation replacing her earlier arrogance. "Tell me your name," I roared, my voice fueled by a newfound determination. The earth shook violently, debris rained down from the ceiling, and Glasses scrambled back, searching for an escape route. I clung to the table, the world around me blurring with the intensity of the tremors. "Tell me your name," Ria lunged, her face contorting into a monstrous snarl. Her fingers, like gnarled claws, reached for me, but before they could connect, an unseen force yanked her back, a strangled scream ripping from her throat. "You maggot!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with rage. "You dare ask for my name? You are nothing. Dust. I will crush you. Tell me your name." The tremors intensified, threatening to bring the entire structure down. Rocks tumbled from the walls, and the earth groaned in protest. "I am beyond you, mortal," Rhea screamed. "How dare you defy me? Tell me your name." A deafening scream filled the chamber, echoing off the walls and vibrating in my bones. Grotesque cracks snaked across Rhea's face, revealing glimpses of something horrifying beneath. A primal fear threatened to consume me, but I held my ground. I am, she stammered, her voice cracking. "I am." With a final, earth-shattering roar, the facade shattered completely. Rhea's body contorted, morphing into a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and bone. A name, raw and ancient, ripped from her mangled form, echoing through the collapsing chamber. The world dissolved into chaos. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the monstrous entity that had been Rhea dissolving into a million pieces. The night had been a masterclass in controlled chaos. The air hung thick with the stench of defeat, a perfume my fellow players wore with varying degrees of grace. All except him. The man across the table remained a cipher, his face an unreadable mask. My chips, a glistening monument to misfortune turned fortune, taunted him from their pile. I fanned my hand out, a slow, deliberate movement. Feeling lucky, he met my gaze, a flicker of something deep, maybe defiance, maybe fear crossing his eyes. "Not particularly." "Then let's change the stakes," I purred, a predator savoring its prey. I shoved all my chips forward with a flourish. Double or nothing. But this time, the wager isn't money. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his stoicism. "What then?" My smile widened, a slow, unsettling thing. "Your name. On the table. Winner takes all."